Hello, good morning. Can folks hear me? All right. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Good morning and welcome. Let folks find a seat and we'll begin with a word of prayer. All right, let's bow. Father, we are so very thankful for this day. We're thankful for this place that we can gather in your name, this warm place where we can gather. We're thankful for this time where we can study your word, and specifically from these passages in the Old Testament, and specifically about how you use people, regular people with regular problems to accomplish your will. Help us to internalize this lesson and think about this morning and today and this week how you can use our lives, however imperfect we are, to accomplish your will throughout the situations and people that surround us. We pray these things in your Son's name. Amen. All right, so if you're new to this class, you can kind of see we have a theme class going here. The theme is broken. Learning from mistakes, a character study. We're going through several characters in the Old Testament. And the character that I'm talking about for 3 weeks is that of Samson. So a quick recap. Sometimes my recaps are too long, but I'll try to keep it quick. So week one, we started off on track. And I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for the situation in Judges, but also emphasize the fact that Samson really did have a pretty good upbringing as far as we could tell, as far as the situation could be in that day and age and place. Again, we spoke about the background of Judges, how Judges should be a big warning sign for us. And why is that? And then we spoke about these verses that repeat over and over in the books of Judges. The sons of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. So Judges is, in some ways, almost a case study of what happens when these things occur, when God's people do evil in the sight of the Lord and do what's right in their own eyes. And specifically, we talked about the Hebrew people, and we talked about this cycle, right? The people sin, they're oppressed by people that they didn't drive out under Joshua for many reasons. They groan and they cry out, and sometimes they pray. And God delivers them through a judge, someone he brings up to rule over the people. And then peace is here. And then with peace comes complacency. And with complacency comes sin. And with sin comes oppression, and the cycle continues. And we discussed how this is true of the Hebrew people throughout the book of Judges. And a comment was made, and a couple comments were made, and they were very on point, that this is also true of, it could be true of a church body, it could be true of individuals. And so as we study the person of Samson this morning, we can see how this is also true of the individual Samson, as he is part of this seemingly never-ending cycle. It's not it does end. This cycle does end, but it's quite a few rough years for the Hebrew people throughout the book of Judges. And a few more points before we get into this week. I just want to make a correction, something I said in passing, that when Abraham was going through, that he might not have encountered the Philistines, but I think I got that backward. He did encounter the Philistines and his son as well. So they were already in the area at the time. But we do know they were from Crete. They were sea peoples. If you hear the word Cretans, the Philistines were Cretans. Also, and Brother Adam made a comment about they were also the descendants of Ham. And I just wanted to reemphasize the importance of that. The fulfillment of the evil that Ham did, and the words that Noah gave to Ham about his descendants, the Canaanites, including the Philistines in that discussion. So, and the point being that this is not, one of the points being is that not that every one of the Philistines was cursed individually by this event, but as people learned from the people that came before them, so it goes. And the Philistines were no different than that for the rest of the Canaanites in their depravity, in the evil things they did, the evil things they did in worship, the evil things they did to the people around them. They were very much a negative influence all the way around, and especially to God's people. And then lastly, we were kind of wrapping up really quick, but we were talking about how impressive some of the actions were of Samson's parents. That of Samson's mother being one of those that had a miraculous birth, that she was barren. She was visited twice by an angel or messenger of God. And that not only did she give birth to Samson, but she also, and she and her husband followed the directions about Samson being a Nazirite, but she also followed the Nazirite vow, which is impressive as well. So, quick reminder: what are the 3 parts of a Nazirite? This is important. 3 parts of a Nazirite vow. Don't cut your hair. No wine or fruit of the vine, and then nothing grape related. What's the third one? Nothing unclean. Right. So don't touch any dead bodies, anything like that. So those are the 3 things, and we said normally that's something that someone does voluntarily for a period of time to dedicate themselves to the Lord. And oftentimes at the end of that, they would even cut off their hair and dedicate all that to the Lord. But Samson was from birth, supposedly from birth to death. That was what he was supposed to do. But as we'll see, things change. All right, and we've entitled week 2, Going Off the Rails. So week 1 was starting off on track, and Samson's father also inquired of the messenger of God, how can we raise this son? What should he do to be your servant? So they started off on track, but week 2 quickly things go off the rails, and this is where we'll really dig into kind of what Bill was talking about last week, how we can learn from the mistakes and the missteps of God's people, and specifically how God seems to over and over and over again choose people to use to do His will that are not the people you would expect. I was just talking with the Hairstons just before class about that, how so often, in our society, we want to elevate someone who is, amazing at this or that. And Samson has this great strength, but his weaknesses are so great and so profound. And that's what we're going to focus on for this study. So let's jump right into it. We're actually going to back up a couple verses to Judges 13. So this is the end of Judges 13. We finally actually get to the birth of Samson. The woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson, and the child grew up, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him, in Mahanadan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Then Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. All right. And I can't leave well enough alone. So we're going to talk about places before we get into this. But Mahanadan just means the camp of Dan. Between Zorah and Eshtaol, we'll talk about that. But before we go into the places, verse 24, the woman gave birth, and the child grew up, and the Lord blessed him. So that's where we kind of talk about this. He had and we learn later in the book that Samson says, I was a Nazirite from birth. So his parents kept this for him. He was raised in this environment, and the Lord did bless him. And then 25, the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him. And so we hear many times, we're going to talk about this more next week, the Spirit of the Lord and how all these miraculous works of Samson, he's not, we can imagine he probably did look huge. He looked like The Rock or something, our imaginations. But his mighty strength was not of his own. It was miraculous. It was the Spirit of the Lord. And we can't forget that through all of this. He did have these mighty strengths, but they were from God. His weaknesses, however, were all his own. So, all right, map time. Woo. All right, so again, this is Israel. This is where we are. So we're going to focus in here in Dan. So we're focused in this area. So we zoom in. So we look at the Philistine territory and the tribe of Dan. So you see the Philistines here on the coast, the coastal sea peoples, landing here and kind of spreading eastward from the coastline. And you see Dan up here, and you see kind of how this line overlaps. The territory of Dan, the tribal lands of Dan, were overlapped by the Philistine territory. And we read a couple times in these passages that the Philistines were ruling over the Israelite people at this time. So again, because of that cycle of sin, they were under the control of the Philistines. And so this was probably some conflict in this area. And also Judah had a much larger territory and was right there as well at that intersection. We're actually going to zoom in one more time. So here's where we get to today's part here, the Valley of Sorek. So this is, so you can't really see that well, but I try to do a topographical map. So here in the east are the mountainous areas, the hilly parts. Here in the west are the flat parts where the Philistines are. So they came from the coast, and the further you go uphill is where the Israelites are. Okay, well, why am I showing you this? Well, the water flows down from here. This is more, it's kind of a river, kind of a wadi. The water might not flow all the time, but it is a place of agriculture, right? And so Timnah right here is part of the Philistine territory. Zorah and Eshtaol, which is where Samson is from, is part of the tribe of Dan and their territory. And again, their lines intersect all through here. So this is a fertile valley, and it's basically under the control of the Philistines. Now the Hebrew people, do also use the fertile valley up here and do some of their farming, but the best part of this land here is used by the Philistines. And this will all be important later as we go through our story. But also to see, while we're here, Zorah is up here on a hill, and Timnah is down here in a valley. So you can kind of see down to Timnah, look over the fields here. And one really cool thing is that a lot of these areas have remained, a lot of them are really populated, but parts of these areas have remained mostly unchanged for over 3,000 years since this period. So this is a modern image of the Valley of Sorek between Zorah and Timnah. So Zorah, this is actually closer to Zorah than what we're talking about here. But when you read about Samson going down to Timnah. He's been going down these hills. When you read about the vineyards, they're right down. When you read about the foxes and Samson tying the fire to the fox's tails, there's still, to this day, there's a lot of wheat being grown there. Yeah, go ahead.
John, if you put that other slide back up.
Sure.
Now, this area here is what God talks about, a sensual land that flows with milk and honey.
Mm-hmm.
It is a good land, it is a prosperous land.
Right.
And this was the land that the people of Israel, the tribe of Dan was especially told, drive out the inheritance, get them inhabitants out of there. This is this land that Dan chose not to drive the Philistines and all of other tribes out of that land. That's why they end up with those problems.
Right, exactly. And the reason that they also wanted so hard to hold on to it, the Philistines were not going to let that go easily, but the Israelites did not accomplish, specifically the Danites in this territory, what God had set out for them to do, which is to drive them out. And again, this is for this, this looks fairly lush, to our eyes, but this is very lush to their eyes. This is and again, it is lush. It is a beautiful place, a land flowing with milk and honey. And we're going to talk about honey too. So so all of this ties together as we read. Again, this is, I think it pictures the words. I have trouble with words, but this helps me process a lot of what we go through. So when it helps me to visualize Samson going and moving and interacting with these people and what's going on. All right. Any other comments before we get back into the words? All right. All right, so I'll read this section, then we'll pick it apart a bit. So Judges 14, 2 through 4. So he came back and told his mother and father, I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore, get her for me as a wife. Then his father and his mother said to him, Is there no woman among the daughters of your relatives, or among all our people, that you go to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she looks good to me. However, his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, for he was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. Now at that time the Philistines were ruling over Israel. All right, things get interesting quick, don't they? So let's talk about this Samson character, huh? So he came back. So again, he went down to Timnah. He came back and told his father and mother, I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore, get her for me as a wife. So how did Israelite people normally go through the process of finding a mate and marrying in this time? Was it like this? Yeah, the families arranged it. It was much more. Everyone was involved. Adam, did you have anything to add?
You were told not to marry an unclean person.
Right. Yeah, this is very specifically for the Hebrew people. His parents are pleading with him. Is there no woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all our people that you may take the wife from an uncircumcised Philistine? So this is not about a racial divide. This is about a spiritual divide. There are instances of people of other races that are proselytes of Jews Rahab is a perfect example of that in the lineage of Jesus. So it's not the racial component; it's the spiritual component. They were commanded in Exodus, "Hey, you're going to be a people. You need to be a people. You need to worship God." And what's the reason not to intermarry with all these people? Tempted to pull away. worship their gods. Yeah.
The other problem is these people are part of the people God drove out.
Mm-hmm.
Why you marry what God is driving out of the land?
Right. So all of those things together, these were the people that God told them to drive out, and they're doing the exact opposite, intermarrying. And we'll see some other things here too. So right off the bat, we see, and the parts I highlighted here are bringing flavor to the person of Samson here. So first, he says, "I saw a woman. Get her for me as a wife. Get her for me, for she looks good to me." And again, literally, it is right in my eyes. So again, what did we say just earlier about that? Yeah.
It's interesting they chose her by sight.
Exactly. He chose her by sight, what was right in his eyes, not what was right in God's eyes. Right. Yes, she was probably attractive. Yeah. So and Samson seems to be so. As we go through this character study and these other character studies, we're looking at these people who are real people. And Stan, did you have something?
Sorry for missing some things. It's this first example of Samson showing his headstrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, because you sit there, to me it's interesting because he's disrespectful of his parents,
Mm-hmm.
which is contrary to commandments.
Right.
At the same time, this phrase of "this was from the Lord," it is like, okay, how are his parents supposed to know this? So clearly he's like, I got blinders on. I hate to say, is he ruling the household? Is he intimidating his parents? And items like that. So it's an interesting situation to think about the dynamics of his relationship with his parents.
Right, and that's a very, thank you, Stan, for that segue. The comments were made, how interesting it was, Samson's relationship with his parents. It seems that, yes, Bailey?
We get, and what I'm about to say might be inaccurate, but we get in a frame of mind that we start to interpret things funny. Or not funny, it may bias how we interpret things. Right? So I'm going to say something that's completely opposite, just for the sake of stirring thought process. The phrase "is right in my eyes" is a phrase that means she seems fitting. She seems to fit. It's not a beautiful, good-looking. The beautiful, good-looking phrases are used somewhere else in the book of Genesis and Exodus. And this seems right in my eyes. And don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
there are occasions when that is used when a person will make a decision of what seems fitting and it's not. And Absalom is one of those cases.
Right.
But it's a choice of not good looks. It's a choice of this seems to fit what we're about. And he might have been wrong in that choice, but that's why he chose. The scripture gives us an indication he might have been right in that choice because of the phrase you have in green. And so there's a different way to look at this, is that he actually may have made this choice because he saw what the Lord's will was. And it's a completely different way of looking at it, and it kind of throws us off, but I want to throw it on the table. And the reason I want to throw it on the table is because he tells the Philistines a proverb. Out of the strong comes something as sweet. And what we don't recognize is the Philistines are the big people. They're the ones that are big and strong. And we tend to want to pick, when we look at physicality, we tend to get afraid of physicality. Remember, Goliath came from Philistines. We kind of get afraid of physicality of it, right? But he tells a proverb to them that out of the strong, something sweet comes. And it's possible that the riddle of that proverb is, my wife is coming from the strong. Something sweet is coming from the strong, and you'd be surprised at how that can happen. It's surprising that something sweet can come from such physicality, right? such overpowering. So now I'm gonna stop there. But the reason I put that out there is, we ought to be careful at a higher level.
Yep.
Pay attention to what the words really say and think about it a bit, because there's a riddle that helps us to understand. And for most of my life, I chose not to try to understand that riddle. But then when I tried to understand the riddle, I thought, oh, maybe that's why Samson did pick her. And it's okay. In their culture, a person would go say to their parents, would you please go get her to be my wife? Because it was a negotiation. And negotiation is not the right word. It was an agreement between parents for a marriage. And so it's okay for Samson to go to him. It would be shocking because she's a Philistine, but it's okay that he asked. Now, he probably was pretty bold in asking, and that would seem arrogant to his parents, potentially, depending on his spirit, right? But I just want some things out there to cause us to think differently because of the sake of conversation. And I'd appreciate feedback after the class.
Thank you, Bailey. Yeah, we will not have time. And I don't have time to summarize what Bailey said, but
Big mistake when you pick the lie.
yeah,
The
so,
lie. So that's kind of what we learned from
well,
it, right?
well, and there's a pattern, and in between there's a harlot as well. So there is a pattern of Samson making these decisions that are not great, and it's interesting to think that this one might have been the best of his not great decisions, because still there is the pushback from his parents. But we do read here in verse 4, and verse 4 is a key verse. Yeah, 1 second.
Real quick question. It says the father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord. Did Samson know?
Exactly.
Right.
That's what
Right.
we may need to learn from that.
Right. So yeah, we'll read verse 4. However, his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, for he was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. So my big point here, and then we'll get to Adam, to bring out on this slide is that he was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. And all of this, whether or not it was Samson's incredulity with his parents, or his just following his base senses, or whether there was more, that he was more in tune with the actual plan of God. The point here is that it was the plan of God, that God was seeking an occasion against the Philistines, and he used this as the impetus for all of the, and we'll see here, hopefully by the end of class, it's a domino effect of what's about to happen. This is the first domino, okay? And I appreciate the comments, and it's given me a lot to think about what state of mind Samson was in here. But regardless of that, Samson still makes plenty of horrible decisions. So we don't have a lack of things to choose from there. So go ahead, Hannah.
I'm gonna have to push back on one thing. What is the context of the whole book of Judges? The whole book of Judges is each man does what is right in his own eyes. So basically, Samson is no different from the other judges. They are doing what is right in their own eyes. And God is using that to his advantage. So we always keep that in context. That's how the book opens, and that's how the book will end. Okay, there was no king, and everybody did what was right in their own eyes.
Right. So in the interest of time, let's keep going. We're going to add some flavor to this discussion. So I'm going to read through, and then we'll pick it apart again. Then Samson went down the hill, went down to Timnah with his father and mother, and came as far as the vineyards of Timnah. Remember, we even saw some modern vineyards there. And behold, a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, so that he tore him as one tears a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. So he went down and talked to the woman, and she looked good to Samson. When he returned later to take her, he turned aside to look at the carcass of the lion, and behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the body of the lion. So he scraped the honey into his hands and went on, eating as he went. Now he came to his father and mother. He gave some to them, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey out of the body of the lion. Then his father went down to the woman, and Samson made a feast there, for the young men customarily did this. When they saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. Okay. The plot, the next dominoes are about to fall here. Okay, so Samson's going down to Timnah. So they're proceeding with Samson's idea to marry this woman. He's approached by this lion, and again, he attacked the lion. He defended himself, killed the lion with his own hand. So we see his great strength and power. But again, it's his strength, but it's through the Spirit of the Lord that came upon him mightily. Okay, but he tore him again with his bare hands, nothing in his hand. Okay, so just keep that in the back of your brain there. He goes down, talks to the woman, comes back, scrapes the honey into his hands. You know, he's eating it as it goes along, again, with his hands. Okay. When he had come to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and he did not tell them how he got it. Okay. And his father went down to the woman. We'll get there in a second. Okay. So what's the last thing we said? What's part of the Nazirite vow? Don't touch what? Don't touch anything unclean. Okay. Now you could almost make an argument. Well, the lion was attacking him, and he didn't have a weapon, so he had to kill him. But what would have been the Israelite response to that if he had touched that lion? Where should he have gone? To a priest, right? He should go through the ceremonial cleansing process, right? Immediately. But where did he go? Oh, I'm going to go down and see the lady. Okay, he was, fresh from killing a lion. So he probably washed up in the stream or something, but kept on his way. Okay, and then he's coming back the other way. And what does he do? This again is without excuse. What does he do? Right, he touched something unclean with his bare hands, specifically the body, specifically food. Not only did he touch it, he scooped it, and not only did he scoop it, he ate it. Not only did he eat it, what did he do? Gave it to his parents. Which did what to his parents? Made his parents unclean. Did he tell them where it came from? No. Again, we talk about, and Stan brought up the idea, and again, there's some, at the very least, there's some high disrespect going on between Samson and his parents. That is not something a good Israelite would do, to not only be unclean himself, but to make his parents unclean. Because again, remember, what did his mother specifically do in preparation for the birth of Samson? She took on the Nazirite. She was acting as a Nazirite. Now, I don't know if she continued after the birth of Samson, but she was serious enough about that she abstained from those things in preparation for the birth of Samson. And now Samson's going back and imparting these things negatively on his family. So his decisions are starting to negatively impact others. That's kind of the point here. And then number one, so he broke one part of the Nazirite vow. Okay, and then this honestly didn't jump out at me until I studied it just a little bit. Samson made a feast there, for the young men customarily did this. So this is a bachelor party. Okay, the word feast here, this word implies alcohol, and probably a great amount of it. It's the same word in Esther when King Xerxes and Vashti and the whole civil unrest there that led to the Little Miss Persia contest. All of that began with a feast filled with alcohol. Same thing with Daniel and his compadres being taken out of the country, and Daniel and his friends resisting the feast of the rulers there, this feast involving large amounts of rich food and alcohol. Okay? So what was the second part of the Nazirite vow that we mentioned? Alcohol, right? So we've just started the verses where Samson's an adult making decisions on his own. He's already broken 2/3 of the Nazirite vow. That's not really something that jumped out to me as much reading this before. But again, his decisions, again, it's part of God's plan. And this is the great, I don't know if conflict's the right word, but one of the great things for us to think about, to study, to learn from, is how in the world these decisions line up with God's plan. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I think about periodically, and I don't know how important this is in the whole concept, Samson didn't make that vow. It was made for him before he was born.
Right. But I mean, again, speculating here, it would have been impressed upon him that the importance of what it meant. But you're right. It was not something, and you know, his nature seems to be that of impulse. How many of us know an impulsive person? Or have been, or are an impulsive person? So again, too, emphasizing this, the strength of Samson comes from the Spirit of the Lord coming on him mightily. The weakness of Samson is his own. Something highlighted here too. For the young men customarily did this. I haven't studied this part particularly in detail, but I'm going to assume this is the young men of the Philistines, because that's the Philistine young men. These are the 30 young men that are involved in this situation, and the fact that it involves a feast. Again, this word feast, when used in this context, is used almost exclusively with non-Israelites. This is the raucous party type of feast. So a big theme of what's going on here in the book of Judges, and again, with that cycle of sin that we showed up there, and then specifically zooming in on Samson, is this being at peace and looking around and sinning. Well, it's not just being at peace, looking around and sinning. It's looking around. Who are you looking at? The people around you. Who was Samson surrounding himself? Young Israelite men or young Philistine men? How is he acting? As a young Israelite man or acting as a young Philistine man? Now, again, too, geographically, that's what we were looking at. One of the reasons I spent so much time on that is that they were right up against each other. He was on the border with all these people. He probably grew up with a lot of these people. They shared that valley, in a sense, for agriculture. He was he was making decisions in the form of the decision. So there's a couple things to think about with ourselves, think about our own decisions, think about our own impulsiveness. Also, think about who we surround ourselves with. Who do we run with? Who do we do these things? And again, too, the backdrop behind all of this is God is all using this as part of His plan to overthrow the Philistines. Again, to help His people who didn't finish the job in the first place. So, did you have a comment real quick?
It's interesting because Paul kind of summarizes all of this by saying that, you know, even in our weakness is still a tool. So whether it's Samson's impulsivity or, you know, Paul's physical weakness, his thorn in the flesh, God can still use that. And it is through human frailty and human weakness that God's strength is made most powerful and evident.
Right. So the comment was made about God's strength being shown through our weakness. And there are several passages that reflect that. And again, there are so many figures in the Bible that God uses through their weakness, whether it be physical or decision. Just while you're talking, I was thinking about, was it Romans 7? Paul had a lot of struggles internally, and that wasn't necessarily his physical weakness. That was his making decisions about his own actions. Oh dear. Okay, so I thought this might happen. So the next slide is the rest of the story. So we're going to go quadruple speed here. So these are the dominoes. And again, we're not giving, with these dominoes, we're not giving nearly enough time to study. I do encourage you to go through and read through these passages a couple times on your own, again, reflecting on specifically events in your own life where, in your past, thinking back, what has God used that was a negative situation, was a negative decision, but that God used for his glory. And I know, and just as a personal example, I'm not going into there, but we all know of children who are born in circumstances that are not great, through decisions that were not great. But that those children can grow up and become amazing followers of God. That's just a tiny example of just the many that we go through in our lives, that where God is so much more powerful than us, that his strength is not measured in our ways of measuring things. He can use good people to do good things. He can use bad people to do good things. He can use good people. I mean, good people do bad things. When good people do bad things, he can use those bad things to do good things. When bad people do bad things, it's 4. He can use those bad things. He's used entire nations like that. So, real quick, the dominoes. Samson gives the riddle to his feast guests. Again, big bachelor party. The guests get his fiancée to coax the answer. Okay? Samson kills 30 in Ashkelon to get the clothes because they made a bet, right? If you can't answer, then either I get clothes or you get clothes, right? So to get the clothes, he goes down to either deeper into their territory. I might not have time for you to get the clothes. While all that's going on, his wife is given away to his best man. That's not good. And that's when, remember the picture of the fields I showed, that's when Samson ties the torches to the foxes and destroys the field. And again, that's the breadbasket. That's where the Philistines are getting their food. This is a big deal. Quick aside. So I always thought that Dagon was a fish god, fish idol that they worshipped. He could be, but it also could be a wheat god. The word dag or dago or whatever, it could be interpreted either way. So if you because we really don't know. But if it is the wheat god, this is a very interesting thing. But anyway, that's an aside. So you burned our wheat, we're going to burn your wife and her father. So that's not fun. Immolation. Okay, Samson's upset. So he struck them ruthlessly with a great slaughter. We don't even know how many. It's probably more than the 30 he already killed for the clothes, but probably not as many as the numbers he's going to kill next. So 3,000 men of Judah, after that, he ran up to the hills. Then 3,000 men of Judah is like, we got to do something. We got to get this guy out of our, not out of our hair, but we got to, these Philistines are going crazy here. We got to stop this. So they get Samson. They deliver him to the Philistines. And that's when Samson picks up the jawbone of a donkey and kills 1,000 Philistines, right? And I almost ordered one online. You can order anything online. Is Heather in here? She's probably glad I didn't. Yeah, about yay big. But I did, and she can look in the garage. I duct taped a pry bar to 2 hammers, 18 inches long, about, at least a little bit over 2-3 pounds. The thing is not fun. I mean, you could imagine the Rock swinging something like that around. You would, and I did the math, 30 seconds. Anyway, 1,000 kills. He was killing all day. It was not. So he was thirsty. Samson's blessed with a spring of water from God. And he judges for 20 years. Hot dog. So this story really spirals. And again, too, we're not even to chapter 16. things keep going from there. So all this to, Andy, did you have something for 10 seconds?
I was just gonna say that 30 sets of clothes was a very expensive bet.
Yeah, yeah. So all that to say, thank you for your time. Oh, I did find a picture. So it was at least that big, and you could just imagine anyway. Thank y'all. Have a good week. And again, think about God using rough times for good purposes.